We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the Halting Winter Podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the Halting Winter Podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Patrick Bryant, city manager in Avondale Estates out in the great state of Georgia, all the way on the East Coast. Man, Patrick, great to have you on the podcast today. Really a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. Happy to be here. It's a rainy day over here in Avondale Estates, Georgia. I'll tell you that.
Well, rain in Avondale, rain here in Olympia, and so that's odd. I thought I'd be calling and it'd be sunny and humid, but no, we're matched up. We're in sync today.
Well, I'm glad because we need some rain. We had a little bit of a drought here in the spring, so glad to see the pattern shifted and the rain start to come. We've done a lot of planting this past year, and I want to see that stuff bloom.
That's right. Well, I can't wait to dive into to Georgia and hear kind of about this place. You know, we've only had a couple people on from the area. I think Scott Andrews had spent some time in Georgia. What is her name? She was the city county manager for Augusta there. She's an amazing woman. But that's it. So we got to have more Georgia folk on. And in fact, we got them in the pipeline. So here we go. And your story is going to be unique because it's not just going to be Georgia and Alabama. It's going to take us all the way over to California, Nevada. So let's do it. Let's get to your story before we again get to the professional accolades and those waypoints. Let's take it back to the beginning. Tell us about where you were born and kind of the childhood that shaped you.
Back to the beginning. Okay, so I was born in Selma, Alabama, a hotbed for political activity during the Civil Rights era. In fact, my father started practicing law in Selma for a very influential figure in the Alabama Democratic Party. Cecil Jackson was his name. And so my parents were in Selma for 13 years. I was born there. On my 6th birthday, we moved to Birmingham, and I was raised primarily in Birmingham until I went off to school. But then, of course, I came back. But we were in a very politically energized family. Both of my parents grew up in an era where political participation was encouraged, and they certainly took advantage of that, right? They were born in 1950, so 18 years old in 1968. They went through the Civil Rights era, Vietnam. So they had a real cool perspective, and they were more than happy to share that with me. So we were one of those families who, watched the news every night and talked about, things that were going on in Washington. things that were going on in Montgomery, which is the capital of Alabama. So, we talked about civics a lot. So I've always been into it. And then I, pretty much thought I was destined for Washington, D.C. myself. That's what I was going to do. I would go to college, major in political science, be off to D.C., either work in the halls of Congress or be a campaign guru or something like that. And so I go to college at Alabama. I do major in political science, but I have, maybe a little too much fun in Tuscaloosa. It's hard not to. It's a fun place to be. So,
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, baby. And I guess my junior year, I said, you know what, and if I want to get serious and start focusing on life after college, maybe it's a good idea to kind of transfer back to UAB, get in a little less hectic environment. I did that, ended up double majoring. I added political science and communications. So political theory and communication theory, which I thought, exactly, I'm going to go be a campaign guru. So that's the ticket. But I had the head of the Department of Government at UAB when I graduated call me into her office for a meeting. And she was like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to go to DC. That's what and she's like, do me a favor. I want you to speak to this guy who happened to run the public administration master's program at UAB and talk to him about, maybe actually learning how to govern. And I said, all right, fine. I'll have a conversation with him, but the West Wing was on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and I were super into that. So I didn't really pay it much mind. I was just going to have this conversation as a favor. And lo and behold, he convinced me to stick around and get a master's in public administration. So I did. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. But I had a very fortunate encounter in my state and local government class with an adjunct professor who just turns out to be one of the, Mount Rushmore heads of city management. Sam Gaston just recently retired. And he got me really into it in class and then offered me the opportunity to job shadow him as an intern for a summer. And it wasn't one of those internships where I was just, filing papers and making coffee. I actually got to go sit in on meetings and, talk to him about what I observed afterward. And I was really pumped up about it and, got those juices flowing. And when that was over, he said, hey, the International City Management Association just started this local government management fellow program. And I think it had only been going for a couple of years at that point. And so I applied, and I always joke with him that I'm sure he had a hand in me landing one of those fellowships. He'll never admit it. But I did. I was selected as a local government management fellow, and that took me out west for the first time.
Wow. Okay. We got to back up because there's so many good things. Let's go back to childhood. And I think this is really unique because I don't think I've had someone on the podcast. We've had a couple people who've grown up in law families and that, they became like, I think of, Becky Pearson, Anchorage, Alaska, municipal leader there. She was their attorney before becoming their kind of municipal manager. But I don't think I've had someone, again, in the unique environment that you grew up, that your parents grew up in, that again, this is where politic and local government collide in the real everyday issues of people and education and water fountains and the real things, not just sometimes we think about state and federal, all government has their purpose, but it can be kind of think tanks and ideation, but local government doesn't have that reality. They have to actually serve people and deal with the consequences of good, bad, and the ugly. And so that's interesting that your parents, their law, even their profession is highly engaged in the raw political of people and their their realities, their life. And so what an influence, how did you, obviously, again, you kind of mentioned you're in this environment where you're seeing this and your parents are making sure that you kind of like, let's talk about this. What did you actually, what did local government, was there any awareness of just the actual nuts and bolts of what local government does as far as infrastructure and kind of the day-to-day reality, or was it more at the political level?
Yeah. At that time, it was all at the political level. I knew that there were police, and I knew that there were fire, and that roads got paved occasionally, and there were, parks and recreation programs that I played Little League at, that, that my mind never went to local government. It was always politics, politics, politics. So it really, and I kid you not, it was not until I met Sam Gaston that I began to understand municipal government, what those governments do on a day-to-day basis, how they operate, how they're funded, what kind of decisions happen on a daily basis. And I realized too, like, I can still get my politics fix in local government, because, as much as I think academic institutions, especially, public administration programs preach, this kind of separation of city managers from politics. That's really not the case at all. You're just navigating a different set of politics. And so for me, once I was introduced to local government, I realized, oh, wow, this provides me an opportunity to get multiple fixes at the same time, like multiple dopamine hits. I get to do service delivery. I get to do politics. I get to talk. I get to manage. I get to instruct. All of the things that I like to do personally came with the territory of local government and municipal politics.
It's so cool. And again, just the journey. I love that you go to Alabama and then you're like, okay, I have some awareness. I need to maybe pull back. And it's interesting, like, again, communication media now, I think those are probably two, like, there probably should be a combined track of communication and political science, especially for local gov. I mean, you can obviously see that at the state and federal level, where it just seems like sometimes all these people are as talking heads. It's all they do is major in communication. But I think at the local level, we don't understand that that's part of the issue why people aren't aware of what their local gov really does and all the positive and all the power of local gov, and the need for involvement in local gov is because there's not great communication. And so it's probably served you well to be mindful of those things, to think of that. I'm sure we'll get into that in your story. I want to hit on just the impact you've mentioned of Sam Gaston, and just like, again, to encourage. We have many local government leaders listening to the podcast, and I just want to encourage you. You might think, I don't have the time, or it's not really that significant. These little drips into the lives of young students is so influential. And it doesn't matter if you might go, well, I'm not a Sam, I'm not some, what did you call the mountain, the Rushmore, I'm not a Rushmore, person. It doesn't matter. Like, if you're leading in the trenches, go share your story, talk about it, I love that he invited you in, and you get to actually shadow and see what a cool process that is. I love highlighting internships that aren't just go in the back and file some papers. Like, watch, like, experience this, because local gov is not only engaging work, like I'm sure you experience, but there's so many facets of it too. It's so fascinating, especially I think for young people to go, oh, I really like this, or public works. I didn't know about that, or the connections. What was it? Maybe just go into there before we get to Douglas County and that, the ICMA fellowship. Talk about the internship for just a moment. What was it like to actually see behind the scenes now into an environment that you really didn't know anything about with local gov, getting put into a city manager's office? Do you remember how that opened your eyes, or kind of what that experience was like?
Oh, it's like a TV show come to life. I mean, it was, how some kids like go away to summer camp, and it's, it's so awesome because they get to do a little bit of everything they want to do, and they're learning, whether that's about nature or science or socialization. That's what it was like for me. It was like, everything that I've talked about my entire life happening before my eyes, and I'm drinking from that fire hose, and I just couldn't get enough of it. In fact, I came in. I remember one week I came in just an additional day one day, and Sam was like, "Yeah, I didn't think you're going to be here today." And I was like, "I got nothing else to do. I wanted to come hang out and see what was going on." And so I did. But that's what it was like. It was kind of like, my amusement park. And I hope, I was fortunate enough to be provided with a lot of opportunity from a young age, but I hope other young people who are interested in politics or are interested in government get the opportunity to be thrown into the fire in that similar way, because it was so much fun. And it's the reason I'm sitting here today. I mean, I owe my career to people like Sam Gaston, to people like Ken Striplin, really giants in the industry who, yes, I realized like my path luck had a lot to do with my path, but God, I still pull from things that I've learned from them every single day. It's those experiences that keep me going, and I'm super grateful. And I was able to repay that favor last summer. I had a student from Vanderbilt who's in their political science department come and job shadow me last summer. We hire 3 or 4 interns every summer to try and get them interested in the field. I'm a real big proponent of giving back and encouraging the next generation. I try and give opportunities to young folks who, may not have the experience when they apply for the job, but it's obvious that they have the capacity to be able to do it, and recognize that so that, we continue to sustain the field for years to come.
One thing I've learned from hosting hundreds of conversations with local government leaders is this: the challenges never stop changing. So many conversations seem to come back to the same question. How do you keep moving your community forward when there's never enough time, money, people, or certainty? You're always looking for ways to work smarter, make better decisions with limited resources, and prepare for what's coming next, all while still delivering the services your residents count on every day. That is why I'm grateful for partners like Tyler Technologies. Tyler has put together 3 free ebooks specifically for local government leaders that I think are well worth your time. One explores how your team can use AI to eliminate repetitive work and improve your efficiency. Another highlights how cloud technology can help modernize your operations. And the third focuses on how your organization can remain resilient, even when things don't go according to plan. You can download all 3 ebooks for free, along with several other resources, all at tylertech.com/winter. Again, tylertech.com/winter. And if you're going to be attending the NACO annual conference, it's in New Orleans this July, stop by booth number 231 and connect with the Tyler team. They would love to learn more about your community and the unique challenges that you are facing. While you're there, if you'd like to see how AI is being used in an actual government setting, make sure to attend the Technology Innovation Forum. It's featuring Fulton County and Tyler Technologies. You're going to hear how they are putting these tools to work in their day-to-day operations and what they're learning along the way. To learn more about AI that works to make your county or your city government far more efficient, visit tylertech.com/winter. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Totally. Was there a moment in that internship? Because you said when you started to get your MPA, you weren't really even knowing, what am I going to do with this? Was it during, I'm assuming it was during that internship that you kind of had an aha moment. Was it the collective experience, or was there a moment in maybe a project or something that you did that you said, okay, I found it. Like, the local gov is the bee's knees for me.
I wish I had that aha moment, that great answer I could give you, but I really do think it was the totality.
Yeah.
Getting to touch every department to understand the depth and breadth of what actually happens, how many people are working toward the same goal to make sure that things run efficiently and effectively, all of that appealed to me because I'm a problem solver and an ideas man. I'll be the first guy kind of to tell you, if you're looking for some technical expertise or somebody who can really manipulate software and make it do what you want it to do, I'm not your guy. I'm a generalist from the word go. And so having that experience, being able to get involved in every single facet of the services that are provided is heaven to me.
Mm. It sounds like I think it made me think about Working Genius, Patrick Lencioni. You know, there's all these assessments you can take, but Patrick talks about there's two, like the ideation, the creation. Like I see a lot of city managers, county administrators are that. They're like, you want them to go implement the plan, you've chosen the wrong people. That's why they need those teams, right? But you want creation and ideation and vision and inspiration. Man, that's the rock star role for those kind of people. So you're listening, you're like, man, that's where I just think, and that's kind of the thing. I think local gov, it's not creative. It's just bureaucracy. It's just blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to be, nor I think that's why I love this podcast, is highlighting the leaders that are doing some really creative things and creating cultures where it's like, no, man, we want our cities to flourish and become new as they take on the old and they press into the future. So, okay, let's talk about Douglas County. This is where this ICMA fellowship is. Tell us about this. Is going to be interesting too, because the internship was at the city of Mountain Brook, Alabama. So you work in a city, a municipality. Now you're going to work for a county, and you're going to go out to Nevada. Like, it might be culture shock. Tell us about the whole experience of this fellowship.
Yeah, it was culture shock. Absolutely. And I can say that now, being way more mature at 45 than I was at 26 when I moved to Nevada. I told myself that, because I made the decision to stay in state for college, that if opportunities came around that allowed me to, relocate to a different part of the country while I was able to do so, that I was going to take that opportunity. So very, very, very rewarding to step out of your comfort zone and do that. So for all the kids out there listening to this podcast, if you do have the opportunity to step outside of that comfort zone and you have the means to do it and the open mind to do it, please take the leap. It's worth it. It pays off in so many ways. But I remember, when I went to interview out there, I fly into Reno. Okay. There are slot machines in the airport, just all going off. I'm picked up by the finance director, who was my boss for the fellowship. She's driving me back toward Minden, which is the county seat. Now, for those who are not necessarily familiar with Douglas County is the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe. So it is just south of Reno, south of Carson City, which is the capital of Nevada. But when we were driving to Minden, and you're just kind of, I think Highway 395 from Reno to Minden. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, are gigantic snow-capped mountains. And I hadn't seen that before. We went, in fact, my first trip to the Western United States was 2 years prior. Like, my family did a road trip from Northern California to Southern California, and I caught up with them during a break from grad school for the Southern California trip. So I didn't even see Northern California, just Southern. But I was blown away just by the sights and sounds, and eventually the completely different climate that I was used to in Alabama. I mean, feet of snow. And there was one point where I just got sick of shoveling snow out of my driveway, that I just made sure I shoveled the tracks I needed in my driveway to back my car in and out of the driveway. because when I moved there, I bought a Subaru knowing that I had no experience driving in snow and ice. So I was going to protect myself the best I could. But it was a culture shock because I'm going from, metropolitan Alabama, because Birmingham is a metropolitan area, to rural Nevada, and going from the American South to the Intermountain West. And so not only is there a huge difference between a metropolitan area and a rural area, but there's also a cultural difference between folks who grew up in the South and folks who live in the Intermountain West. And to be quite honest, I had a difficult time fitting in. There weren't a lot of young people in the organization. I was kind of isolated in that regard. And so that, 15 months that I spent there was really an introspective time for me. It's, who am I? Where do I want to go next? What do I want to do? Because there I was actually a budget analyst. So that was my placement. And I knew if I was going to become a city manager or continue in local government, I needed to know budget construction, budget management, budget analysis. But God bless, that is not my interest. So, I knew it, and was unbelievably excited to get a different experience in local government at my next step.
Yeah. You go to Nevada to serve some hard time. And, and I bring that up because I love what you said. You encourage young people, if you can get out of your context, of your culture, of your place. And America is the United States is such an interesting place. In one country, you have almost 3 radically different cultures. In fact, you probably have 6, because you have West Coast, Midwest, and East Coast, which I think are radically different. And I've lived in all 3 at a young age. I grew up on the West Coast, did Midwest for my undergrad, lived in the East Coast, New York City for my first master's degree. And those 3 experiences were radically different. The people, the culture, just how you engage and, walking down the street and saying hi. And then you have the South, which again, for an Alabama, Georgia, like everything is sweet tea, love, let's go. Everyone's family, everyone's your cousin, to Nevada, where I'm sure it's kind of that, West Coast kind of feel, where it's just kind of it's more Scandinavian, more kind of hard to break into we kind of, you got to kind of, smaller circles, you got to kind of prove who you are. It's not that hospitality, isn't quite there like you experience in Midwest, South. And so, there's little things like that. But again, it stretches you and it wakes you up to, there's different ways to interact, different ways. And so what a cool experience. Now, how in the world did you get to the city of Santa Clarita, California from Douglas County? It just seems like you're just throwing darts at the map. And you're going to work with Ken Striplin, who we had on just a few episodes ago, episode 305. And Ken is just, again, you mentioned you got to work for under Sam Gaston, who's just a Rushmore. And then Ken, man, I think of the world of Ken. This guy is just a powerhouse. And so tell us about how in the world you get to Santa Clarita and what that experience was like. Yeah.
Interestingly, though it sounds like I was maybe throwing darts, I wasn't. I was throwing darts accurately. And so I was watching the TV show Weeds at the time. If you remember that, it came on Showtime. And, the first season was filmed in adjacent to Santa Clarita and they used this neighborhood called Stevenson Ranch as kind of the location for the homes. And I thought that place looked so cool. And so, I was just tooling around on the internet one day and was on Wikipedia looking at the show Weeds and where it was produced and filmed. And I saw it's Santa Clarita, California. And when it came time for me to start applying to jobs elsewhere, I saw the analyst job in the city manager's office open in Santa Clarita, California. I said, well, that's meant to be, right? And for some reason, even after talking to me, they said, all right, we'll hire you. We'll bring you in. I remember it very, very well. And boy, let me tell you, Santa Clarita, the Kens, because Ken Striplin's predecessor was Ken Pulskamp, who is also a beast. I mean, these 2 guys are brilliant, just run an unbelievably tight ship, have a culture built that, is second to none. I couldn't have landed in a better place to learn how to run an organization than Santa Clarita, California. And I hope Ken listens to that so he can hear me say that. But it's absolutely true. And when I got there, I was so unbelievably green. Not only as someone in the field of municipal government, but as a person. Right? Most of my experience, except for Douglas County, which again was real introspective, had been confined to Alabama, and largely with folks I had grown up with my entire life. A lot of my friends that I still hold dear today have been friends since I was 5, 8, 12 years old, right? So just a real homogenous experience. And Douglas County, again, was rural. So it didn't really have that kind of corporate feel, that, rat race feel. It was still very slow paced, less educated. My colleagues weren't all master's degree holders. And then I go to Santa Clarita and, it's glass office building and everything's so nice and everybody's wearing suits to work every day. And I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to, make friends and get to know the ropes. And I'm sure Striplin could tell you fun stories of them just busting my balls left and right. I mean, I also come in with this accent, right, that none of them had ever heard. And it was just a time. And again, I was real green. I knew I was smart enough, but I was, my peers, like who were the same age as me, were just so much more mature from, kind of the perspective of knowing what it takes to work in a high-paced, high-stress environment, get the job done, do so independently without leaning on, your supervisor so much or leaning on other people so much. And so I was kind of behind the curve of a lot of my peers in Santa Clarita. I'll be quite honest. So I knew that and tried to embrace that challenge as much as I could and just listened and observed everything I could possibly do and did so with a smile on my face and I think a warm and inviting personality. And that served me so well. Everything I do today as a manager, I picked up on from Santa Clarita, California, because that is one of the most well-run cities, well-run organizations to prepare you for your career, prepare you for life that there could be. And I made incredible friends while I was there. Friends that I talk. One of them I talked to like 5 times a week. So I have nothing but good things to say about Santa Clarita, California. I miss it. I loved living there. I was there for 7 years. Loved the whole Los Angeles metro experience in addition to the city of Santa Clarita. But it's just a wonderful experience. Got to work with a lot of smart people. Really opened my eyes to the world. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful.
Yeah, because in your story, so while you're there, you're going to work in both the city manager's office and then you end your time there in the transit division. I kind of want to talk about that. But the next stop on your map is you're going to be a city manager. So it seems like you kind of had the idea of like, I think that's what I want to do. Was it like solidified, like in Santa Clarita, like this is the only way, this is the path, you go through Jedi training? How in the world, and why did you go to, what was the transit division thing? Like walk us through kind of now how we end up as the city manager of Talladega, Alabama.
Yeah. Well, so to circle back, I thought the Kens were super cool, right? So like I wanted to be that. That's what I wanted to be. Like I could watch them and be like, yep, that's it. Yep. How do I get there? I have no clue, but that's what I want to do. And, the cool thing about Santa Clarita, and I heard Ken speak to this when he was on, is that they rotate analysts. so that you get a little taste of multiple departments, multiple divisions. That way you're always learning and you don't just kind of get stuck in a singular track. And I very much appreciated that. What was great is, when I moved over to the transit division, I had zero transit knowledge, right? I mean, I knew we operated, a public bus system, but I didn't know that anything else about the transit division. I was so focused on mostly intergovernmental relations in the city manager's office. So brand new experience. Again, I had to drink through a fire hose again, and loved it. I mean, it was so cool. Got not only because I got to understand how Santa Clarita's transit system operated, and I'm sure this is very similar in large metropolitan areas, but all of the city's transit systems kind of connect to the larger metro transit system, right? And they all work intertwined in order to move people from one area of the metro area to another place in the metro area. And, so I worked on two really, really cool projects during my time there. One, and this is, this is great. And looking back on it now, you're like, wow. But, we developed a QR code system. So we put a QR code at every single bus stop in Santa Clarita so that people could use their phones to snap a picture of the QR code to access, the transit schedule real time. So real cool innovation. We were way ahead of it because nobody was using QR codes at the time. And people were like, what are you wasting your money on here? Nobody's going to do this. And now everybody does it. Right. And then working with all of the other transit agencies in the Los Angeles metro area to develop the singular payment system that we used, which was called TAP. It was the Transit Access Pass. It was a cashless system that you could use on any of the affiliate systems. So really cool stuff that I never thought I would ever have the opportunity to touch and may never touch again, right? Avondale Estates certainly doesn't have its own transit system. But, getting to learn that kind of stuff and work with people from all over the place in different backgrounds, different areas of expertise is amazing. And part of the reason why I will gush about Santa Clarita, until I'm long gone from this planet.
It seems like a real brilliant, again, you've mentioned the Kens, just nailing culture. And if you haven't listened to that episode, you got to go back. It's, again, 305, just a masterclass on how to build culture. I love the idea of moving the analysts around because not only does it giving all your team a better perspective of all the things that you do, but I think that's one of the issues of culture is collaboration. And it's real easy to work in one area of local gov and that becomes your area. And it's easy then it's not just the director, it's everyone fighting for budget, fighting for, look at us, we're the thing. You move people around. It's like, oh, I didn't know we did this. Oh, well, we're doing this over here. And maybe we can I think it just breeds more natural thinking towards collaboration. And so in getting out of your own lane, seems like that's kind of what you experience, would you say?
Absolutely. Working at Santa Clarita, although you're trying to touch as many areas of government as you can and build a level of mastery of those areas, what it's really about is relationships and developing relationships with your colleagues, your peers, all members of the organization, because working effectively and getting things done and implementing new ideas relies on relationships. Getting to know somebody, how they think, how they prefer to help, what their, kind of what their love language is, or if you want to call it their work language, semantics. But that is what I think Santa Clarita did at an elite level, was foster your ability to develop organizational relationships. And I still try and do that here. Same kind of stuff, right? Hey, do you want to go work on this project that's kind of outside of your division or your department? Let's do it. You want to go spend time with this guy? Let's go spend time with this guy, because the better you establish those relationships, the better the work environment is, and the better the product you're going to put out at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, how in the world do we get to Talladega? Was it just you going, okay, it's time, I'm ready, I got to become a city manager, and were you just craving? There's got to be some food in Alabama that I don't know about. What is the delicacy in Alabama? Or you could have you've been around the world. It's kind of like you could have chosen anywhere, and yet you're going to go back. Tell us about it.
Oh, you know what? I was not ready to leave. I was very, very happy in California. Sam called and said, "Hey, positions opening in Talladega. I think this is a good opportunity for you. Regardless of whether you take this job or you get selected for this job, just coming and interviewing and putting yourself out there is valuable. So I'd really like you to consider doing that." And so I was like, "All right, fine." I'm 34 years old. I have no business being a city manager. And on a leap of faith, I was like, okay, look, let's just say I get hired or they want me. Now I'm 45 minutes away from home. My mother had recently passed. So my dad and my sister were still in Birmingham. I'd been away from the family since 2007. We're in 2015 now. This is an opportunity maybe to get back and, spend some time with them. Not to mention, and this might go without saying to some people, but others may not understand, we're in the midst of an incredible run at the time that I'm only getting to watch on TV. So I wanted to get back on campus and watch some football too, right? And so, I flew to Talladega. I had a public interview, which is something I had never experienced before. I felt, after the interview, I felt very confident. I was like, I availed myself well here, probably because I'm speaking a language that they hadn't really heard. And so, I leave the interview, and before I get on the airplane to fly back to Santa Clarita, I get offered the job. And, oh no, are we back? We're back.
Yeah, there you are.
Anyway, I think I lost my internet connection there.
Oh, I think it paused a minute. So you said before you flew back, they offered you the job.
They did. And I was recently married at the time and had to convince my wife that a year after we married, we need to leave the only place she had ever left in her whole life and move to Alabama, but not Birmingham, to Talladega. And Talladega.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Before you tell us about Talladega, you're telling me that you found your wife here in California, and this is so great because if again, California, and it's not like you're in the boondocks, the outer limits of Fresno, maybe, and you found like a gal who, Santa Clarita, LA, like this is like, again, to even think, had she ever even been to the South before?
Just to visit my family.
Yeah.
That's it. Like my family and friends, not for any extended period of time. And yeah, she was an LA girl her whole life. And interestingly enough, bless her heart, our marriage did not survive the move. I am now happily married to my second wife, who I love and adore, and my ex-wife is now remarried to a man that she loves and adores. So it all worked out. Needless to say, moving an LA girl who just got married to Talladega, Alabama, is a monumental leap.
I have this unique pleasure, this unique opportunity to meet with thousands of local government leaders from across the nation every year through conferences and workshops and the podcast. Just these interviews, these conversations are just so insightful. And one of the things I have learned about local government leaders is this: the best leaders are lifelong learners. not because they have all the answers. It's because they understand that leadership, that journey of leadership, is never finished. Every challenge, every difficult conversation, every budget season, every organizational change or disruption is another opportunity to grow. That's why this summer we're doing something different inside the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. We're launching a special summer series called Stories That Shape Leaders. You know that every week I take a best-selling book, usually a business book, and we break down its insights and apply them to local gov. This summer, we're taking biographies, memoirs, timeless leadership books that don't necessarily fall into those typical business, culture, strategy kind of genre. And we're going to explore the lives, the decisions, the failures, challenges, the lessons of leaders who navigated incredible adversity, who had to build trust when hope was fleeting, who inspired others not only to dream, but to take action, and who left a lasting impact. Leadership isn't shaped just through strategies and frameworks alone. It is shaped through stories. Stories that challenge assumptions, stories that expand our perspective, stories that help us become the leaders our communities need us to be. When you join the MLDC, you unlock the entire summer series, but you unlock even more. You unlock the weekly leadership content, the live mastermind sessions, the nationwide community of local government leaders, and all the MLDC resources, not just for the summer, but for the rest of 2026. If you are looking for a place to continue growing this summer while connecting with leaders who understand the unique challenges of local government, I would love to invite you to join us. Learn more at haltingwinter.com/MLDC or simply use the link in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation. I can imagine. Tell us about so now you're gonna make this move. And that's a dynamic too. I love that you share, right? It's not just that we don't just have our professions. We have these other aspects of life that make, all these balls that we have to juggle. And you are now, it's one thing to be, even working at Santa Clarita, high performance, high moving, but you're an administrative analyst. It's not like you're, the ACM, or you are now going to be the city manager of it's 15,000 people in Talladega. And this is a real city. This is real weight. And the city management position, this is why this podcast exists, because I'm just so fascinated with this unique position that has to deal with, I call it the municipal tightrope, and you're fighting the three-headed snake. You get electeds, who are their own interesting body. You have staff, departments, highly competent people. Again, a very easy place for silos and, internal warfare. And then you have residents, and all of them have their own opinions and desires and wants. How was it to now you're coming back, but you're coming back into a role you've never been in even Talladega? I don't think, had you ever lived in Talladega? Did you really know, anything really about Talladega? Tell us about it.
I knew one person loosely at the time. I knew one person that I had interacted with several times in college at Alabama, who actually made my transition to Talladega so much easier just by being my friend, which was phenomenal. And I'm ever grateful for him. But I was 34 years old, had only been an analyst. I was not ready for that position whatsoever. In fact, I was the youngest, one of the youngest people in the entire organization. I think there were a couple of police officers that were younger, maybe a couple of guys in public works that were younger, but that's it. So here I am, 34, never been a city manager in a city I'd never really even been to. And I got to run the show. And the council in Talladega too was incredibly interesting because you kind of had a king of the castle who was on his sixth term, who called the shots, so to speak. And then Talladega is a 50-50 black-white racial divided city, and largely still segregated, not legally, but functionally. There's a railroad that bifurcated the city, and north of the railroad was, your African American population. South of the railroad was your white population. They were very much culturally different. Most of the white population, or a significant pocket of the white population, multi-generational, lived there for a long time in kind of these large Victorian homes. And your black population was not very educated, low income, dilapidated housing, blighted infrastructure. So there's a real divide there. And in addition to that, it's a lot like, other areas of rural America, which are struggling to find their footing in modern society. There's no, the manufacturing that carried them throughout most of the 20th century had disappeared to Mexico or China or India. And a lot of the folks who were educated and managed those properties left the city with it. So you had a huge reduction in the availability of employment opportunity. You had a pretty significant brain drain from decades past. You had a school system that was struggling to keep itself, above water, and a city that had been marred by political scandal. I mean, throughout its history. Let me tell you what I walked into. Okay, so there in the 70s and 80s, there was a mayor named Larry Barton, and this was prior to the switch from, your strong mayor government to your council manager. And Larry was convicted in federal court of interstate fraud because what he did was drive to Mississippi, make a phone call back to the city, pretending to be a vendor, send an invoice that then the mayor would okay to pay. So he was siphoning public monies to himself and doing so across state lines, and got popped for that. So he goes to prison, and during his time in prison, the city says, well, we can't let that happen again. So we're going to switch forms of government. And they did. But what they didn't do is bar him from running for mayor again. So he gets out of prison and kind of bides his time. And the term before I got there, he had run and been elected again. Now, at this point, the mayor did not have a voting interest on the council. I mean, it was literally just a, cutting ribbons, kissing babies type of deal. But my second week on the job, I get a call from the Birmingham News asking me, again, second week on the job, just moved from Los Angeles to Talladega. He says, hey, do you have any comment on the brutal assault of your mayor? And I'm like, what? And he's like, oh, you haven't heard? Apparently, the mayor was involved in an altercation with his best friend, which hospitalized him for a significant period of time. And then 2 weeks after I started, and he's running for re-election. And that election cycle, I started in the beginning of July. I believe the election was at the end of August. So boom. I mean, I'm in it right from the get-go. Never been a city manager. What did I get myself into? And, at the end of the day, was able to navigate that and my youth and my inexperience to really grow and become the manager that I have become today. I learned a lot in a short amount of time, especially about what it takes to actually manage people, motivate people, get the right people doing the right things for the right reasons. So I am, although I was overwhelmed by the experience, incredibly grateful for the experience. And it's led me to where I am today. And I can't gush enough about all the great work we're doing here in Avondale, which I know we'll get to. But grateful for the Talladega experience, allowing me to grow in the way that I needed to grow at the time I needed to grow.
Yeah, I love it. It's almost two things I want to highlight. You move from Santa Clarita, right, which is right north of LA, the Hollywood, base of the world. You move to your own kind of sitcom in Talladega, which, what we know, Talladega Nights, like it's kind of what we know, but it's just interesting, these places, right? And the stories that come out and the things that people don't realize, someone has to deal with that. Like, it's not just a story. It's not just a headline. It's not just news. Like, you're trying to figure out, how do we run a city? Now, the thing I really want to highlight is you mentioned the story of this city and its transformation. And I think it's one of the things we're building behind the scenes. We want to turn the podcast into we want to do a series of highlights of these places across America that the mine shut down, the mill shut down, the industry, the car, manufacturing left. So many of our of these cities, again, these bigger cities, not just all big cities, but these cities that they had all of their eggs in the basket of really one big industry, and that company or that industry no longer is there. And what do? And man, it's just, and local gov, people don't realize local gov is it bears the weight of that and has to figure out, like, how do we have an economic development incentive? What do we do with housing? I'm sure you said when you have industries leave and all, brains leave, well, those brains also funded a lot of those houses. And so all of a sudden neighborhoods that were nice become dilapidated. I mean, you look at Detroit and, the chaos that went through when car industry changes, and just neighborhoods that were gorgeous. I have a couple of acquaintances I know that went in home, the deals they would get on these houses that were almost mansions, but just totally dilapidated. It's crazy. Anyway, this happens all over America, right? All over. It's not unique just to one part of the place or one demographic, but you got the taste of it. You got to see it and felt that pressure from a local economic development or from a local government perspective. We could talk forever about this. We got to have you on again.
Oh, for sure.
Let's get to Avondale Estates, because that's where you are now. You went there in 2018. This is again, Talladega is an hour east of Birmingham. Avondale Estates now is going to be in Georgia, but it's just a hop. You're going to hop over because it's pretty close. It's East Atlanta Metro, so you're going to be in a metro environment. This is going to be probably similar to Santa Clarita, yes. I mean, Atlanta is just so huge now, and you're kind of one of the. I mean, this is real heart metro area. Tell us about this. It's about 3,500 people, I think. Tell us about now this, again, your second time in the chair in a different environment, but a totally different environment. Metro from kind of suburban and in different state. It's always interesting in local gov because there's no standard operating procedures. Like, you move states, again, different kind of structures, different kind of way to see city management. Even in city to city, it's different. So tell us about what did it look like to jump over here, and what are you up to?
Yeah. So Avondale Estates is really in the heart of the Atlanta metro. We are 6 miles from downtown Atlanta, an inner ring suburb. We are located inside the perimeter. For people who are familiar with the Atlanta metro, there's an inside the perimeter, there's an outside the perimeter. So we're ITP, about to have our 100th birthday. We are the oldest planned community in the southeastern United States. A very interesting story for the birth of this community, because the founder, he purchased the entire plot of land in 1924, just to the east of the city of Decatur, Georgia, and master planned the entire community. We're back. Okay. Sorry about that. I guess I'm having intermittent Wi-Fi issues. But so community is a master planned community, a garden city. So you have, a commercial district, you have a residential district, and they are bifurcated by a highway leading directly into Atlanta. So start construction on the residential side in 1926. So the first homes were built in 1926. Begin construction on the commercial side in 1928, and then all of a sudden the stock market crashes. So interestingly enough, for the city of Avondale Estates, the kind of the ensuing depression kept the planned commercial district dream from being fulfilled. So over the next several decades, you had, sprawling, haphazard, incompatible use growth because there wasn't a zoning code per se. It was just kind of every man for yourself. So you had retail next to industrial, next to residential. It was just, that's how it was. And interestingly enough, the community really invested heavily in its residential district and disinvested in its commercial district. So the city generated over 90% of its revenue from residential property. And so when I was hired in 2018, for example, we had 93% of our revenue generated by our residential property, 7% of our revenue generated by our commercial property, right? So a significant kind of homogenous economic system here. And we really had to diversify that economy quick or run the risk of taxing our residents to oblivion just to survive. And we have systematically and methodically done that. So from 2019 to 2026, we have doubled the value of the city, which I think is an incredible accomplishment because we developed a downtown master plan and we stuck to it. We didn't let that thing sit on a shelf. It informed everything we do. And we basically used it as a checklist. We're like, okay, we need to improve transportation infrastructure. We need to, build a multimodal pedestrian cycle infrastructure. We need to enhance our stormwater infrastructure. Let's build, a park in our downtown to act as an economic catalyst. Let's, incentivize multifamily development. And we've been doing that and doing that very well. We have, in very short order, transformed this city into a diverse, sustainable economic environment whereby now we don't have to worry about sustaining ourselves for the next 100 years.
It's so fascinating. Like you say, the weight and responsibility, but the impact that local gov has. And what you just shared is the same thing. Like it's one of the big issues up here in Washington state is they can't tax their citizens into oblivion because they can only raise property tax by 1% a year. And many of the cities are strapped because they have not done economic development well for those other things to increase. And now their footprints, I just talked about it the other day. Laura Philpott is in Maple Valley, Washington. And she had to, as the city manager, had to fight tooth and nail to preserve some of their only open space left for commercial because people are like, oh no, we should just develop it. We need houses. It's like, you don't understand. We will bankrupt ourselves because how are we going to provide the services for those people when the tax of residents doesn't work to fund it? And so these are the things that local government leaders have to figure out. And that's why, again, I have such an appreciation because a resident just goes, I just don't want to pay taxes. And it's like, but you do not understand the puzzle that you want all those services and you don't want to live in some dilapidated place with no parks, no, amenities. And it's local gov that has to figure out how do we pay for all the infrastructure to make water, sewer, trash, et cetera, that we all take for granted to work.
Yes.
But then how do you have a cool place that has festivals and it has parks and it has libraries, and has the places that we actually value in our community? So how cool is that a story to, again, like you said, to double the income of what's coming in? That took not only a plan, maybe even talk about for just a moment, the collaboration of getting I don't think people understand that it's not like a city just has a lever to go, oh, we'll just do this. Like, to do what you did is monumental because there's so many players. It's not just a 6 month, like, oh, this is a 6 month project. These are years, and keeping those collaboration and being able to move, like, again, if for those living under a rock, we went through a pandemic while you're trying to do
Right.
this as well.
Yes.
Like, there's all these
Yes.
things. Just talk about that process of what
Yeah.
that was like, maybe what that entailed. Help our audience, both of local government leaders who know and who might be, inspired here, but also just a resident who goes, what?
Right. Okay. So first of all, I want to give credit where it is due, and it is due in spades. The commissioners that have served on the commission since I've been here have been wonderful and trusting, and have provided me and staff with the tools that we need to get things done. Without their support and their open mind and their ability to try new things and do stuff that this city had never done before, is invaluable. And I couldn't have done any of it without them. To put that in perspective, okay, the city had never borrowed money in its history. So no bonding, no significant infrastructure undertaking. Everything was done pay as you go. So you can imagine how slowly things happened in this city. So having a board with an open mind who were able to hear me and hear the experts I would bring to them discuss the benefits of doing things differently than they have been in the past was the key. They also allowed me to build a staff that could carry out these tasks. So in the 8 years I've been here, we've had almost complete staff turnover by design. And I have been incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to recruit and retain folks who are committed to the cause and will, take all the steps necessary to make sure things happen. What does that mean? That means, putting in extra hours if we need to. That means putting on a different hat if you need to. We don't want folks here who want to stay in their own silo. We want folks here who are collaborative, who want to understand all the levers of municipal government and pull them and see what happens. So given those tools, given the personnel resources and the financial resources that we needed to make change, happened. And of course, that's the key, because I can be the best or the worst manager in the world. And if I don't have the right tools in place or the right people in place to help me, nothing's going to go the way we want it to go. So I have to say that it's very important for a manager to work in an organization that also works with them and not against them. So managers, choose wisely when you're figuring out where you want to go. So that I think that was the key. In addition to, and this is equally important, I've worked with the same mayor the entire time I've been here, and he is willing to push boundaries, try new things, do all that. But having the trust from your electeds and given the freedom to try and new things and fail has led to all the success that we've had here. If I didn't live in that environment, Avondale Estates couldn't be where it is today.
I'm going to ask you two more questions and then we'll wrap, because I want to be mindful of your time. But in light of what you just said there, what do you, because I couldn't agree more that I think one of the things echoed on these interviews over and over is the relationship with elected. Can those elected, do they have a vision? Or do they give the freedom then to the professionals to bring it into fruition? What do you think is one of the keys to keeping that relationship healthy for the city manager?
Oh, I wish I had, if I had the answer, we could all be rich. I think it goes back to just relationship building. That's the important thing. Getting to know people as people. I think, and I've experienced this, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. it's easy to see us as kind of a role rather than a person, especially in the day and age of social media where people can kind of just say whatever they want to say and there aren't many repercussions to that action, right? I think in order to be successful in this business, and especially in order to be successful with, manager elected relationships, is you've got to get to know each other as people. You have to understand what they're interested in, what makes them tick, how they prefer to communicate, what type of relationship they want to have with you, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, that's what I do. I want to get to know the person so that after they're done serving, after I'm done serving, we still have a relationship because we got to know each other. And if you do that, the likelihood of success is going to be much, much greater.
Yeah, that's such good wisdom, especially like you said, in the day where it seems like we're just in kind of a vortex of negativity. It's just easier to assume the worst. It's easier to assume that they're going to think different than me. So we're almost adversarial from the get-go.
Yeah.
And when you get to know people, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I know them. I know other aspects of their life. I know them as a person, not just a human being instead of just a human doing in these professional circles. So then when you do have conflict, it's about the ideas. And I think we've lost that. Like we don't argue about ideas anymore. We argue about like personas. Like your idea all of a sudden judges you like, well, you're a bad person if you believe this. It's just like, well, I don't understand. I'm very confused, in the kind of what's happening in the world right now. But I love that. Like, again, taking the time to sit across from each other and go, you're a person. Now I need to know you as a person. Now, how are we going to because that's also the cool work of local gov. You're not just doing ideas. That's the difference, I think, between state and federal. They work in the place of ideas. Yes, they're supposed to be affecting people, but it's a lot of ideas. You work in people. Like if the water doesn't flow, a person tomorrow doesn't live. Like, I mean, these are significant services. And so the economic development and those things, they all impact people on the day to day. And so local gov doesn't have time to just pontificate. It has to figure out how are we making this place function and how are we making it continue to flourish, or it's going to become a ghost town. And so, and my last question for you will be, you've mentioned it. It's to do all that work that you did. It's a lot of hours. It's also a role that doesn't shut off. When you're an analyst, sure, Ken can call you maybe outside of hours and be like, hey, we gotta rock and roll on this. But when you're the city manager, it is a unique role because you are the head of the professional organization. You are, I'm sure, connected to those elected. So people see you at City Hall and, on the video, of those meetings. It's hard then because there's always going to be someone that doesn't like the decisions the city makes, and you get to be the scapegoat. You get to be the face. So going to the gym, going to the grocery store, being just a human can be hard at times. How does Patrick shut off? How does Patrick rest and rejuvenate? How do you make sure that you as a person, a human being, is able to bring your best self to your job?
Yeah. Maintain hobbies. That's how you do it. Don't lose a sense of who you are in the work. So, for example, I mentioned it earlier, but I've had probably an unhealthy relationship with Alabama sports. So I'm very, very into it. And it is a place I can go to get away from that voice in my head who's constantly saying, what if we do this? What if we do this? If I handled this differently, would it have gone better? Yada, yada, yada. So that, and then I want to speak to my new pursuit because this has benefited me in ways that I didn't think were possible. But at the beginning of this year, I really decided, with the encouragement of my wife, to put myself out there, and I started taking improv classes, right? Which introduced me to new people, introduced me to a new way of thinking, and got me out of my head more so than anything else I've ever done. Because if I'm doing improv, I got to be in the moment doing improv. Or I fail. And although failure is a huge part of improv, if you're not focused, you're not going to get better. And so I try to ensure that I have a rich life outside of city management so that I am not singularly defined by the profession. I'm Patrick, who also does improv. I'm Patrick, who likes to smoke meat. I'm Patrick, who eats, sleeps, and breathes basketball. You know, I'm Patrick, who loves my wife and takes care of my dogs. So that's another thing I think I want to impress upon the generation that's coming up after me is, you know, you don't have to get sucked in. You can still be yourself because we've only got a short time on this planet, and it's best to live it the way you want to live it, not the way somebody else wants you to live it.
I love it. So many gems. Patrick, thanks for taking the time today to share your life, your leadership journey, your insights. It's been a treat, and I look forward to having you on again.
Thank you, Seth. I really, really appreciated the conversation. Thank you so much.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter Podcast remind us where government really lives, locally, right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.